Hi, Attorney Steve Vonder, and we're back. We are reviewing RocketLawyer in this video. So, RocketLawyer, is this something your firm should be getting involved in? If you're a new attorney, is this something you want to do? You want to sign up for this? Let's talk about that. So, RocketLawyer is a sort of a new website. I think it's kind of evolving, sort of like LegalZoom is. LegalZoom was one of the first companies that came out and said, well, let's make law inexpensive. Let's make it affordable. Let's make it accessible to the basic person. So LegalZoom basically came out with the low-cost trademarks, the low-cost copyright registration, wills and trusts, all those things. So, and they've done very well. By the way, most people don't know that. One of the articles I read talked about how LegalZoom is, in such a short period of time, I don't know what it was, like 10 years or something, they've become equivalent to a top 100 law firm. So you can see that the demand out there is for low-cost legal services. This is not your daddy's law firm anymore. So where you have excessive billing and things like that. People need access to those legal services. They need them low cost. They need them affordable and understandable. So RocketLawyer is sort of in that vein, where it's a company that is basically they have this incredible templates library where you can create all sorts of different contracts. And when you join up as a RocketLawyer member, I've been a member now for, I think, a couple months, let's say 2 months. And basically when you become a member, you basically sign up and you agree to certain things and to do a few things. Let's talk about first. So what is RocketLawyer? First question. It's basically it's not a law firm. It's basically a company that will help people with legal services and help them have access to a lawyer at reduced rates. And there's no fee splitting, so don't be concerned that you're splitting legal fees with RocketLawyer, because you're not doing that. That would be unethical and violation of your rules. But real quick, what are the basic things that RocketLawyer looks for? You have to be a member in good standing. You have to have malpractice insurance. So these are a couple things just to bear in mind. They will be looking for these things. How do you get started? Well, basically I reached out to RocketLawyer. One of their representatives ended up emailing me back and sent me a contract. I reviewed the contract. One of the important things about their contract, I think, that needs to be pointed out, or at least read, reviewed, and understood, is that there is an indemnification provision in there. In other words, a short way to put it is RocketLawyer doesn't really want to assume any risk if you're doing something wrong as one of their attorneys signed up to take their leads, basically. They have members. So what they do is they sell memberships to their clients. I don't know if it's 20, 30, 40 a month or whatever. There's a monthly membership fee. And for their fee, they get access to the documents in their document library and access to the attorneys in their network. I just call it network. It may not be the best word to use. But basically what you'll find out is you'll get these leads, and if you do something wrong, RocketLawyer is not going to accept responsibility for you. So that's indemnification. So the loss will be shifted to the attorneys that sign up through the network. It's very important, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But basically, to get started, you initiate it with them. They'll send you a contract. You do a quick training seminar talking about what RocketLawyer expects of you and those kinds of things. What do you agree to? Obviously, there's a contract, so you're going to be agreeing to certain things. What I did since I've signed up, I've got a bunch of, I'm going to do business and real estate lawyers, so I got a bunch of real estate leads. Now, most of the questions I was comfortable with, but there are questions that I wasn't comfortable with outside of my area. And in those areas, you simply note that, per your ethical rules, it's out of my comfort zone, so to speak. So what you do have to agree to do, however, is if somebody calls you saying, I want a consultation, you have to agree to get back to them within 1 business day. For example, I recently got someone that wanted to have a property management agreement reviewed. So I had an obligation to reach out to them and to not only reach out to them within 1 business day, but then to review the property management agreement and make some general general suggestions, general legal information, as I call it. So you have an obligation to do that reach out up to 10 pages of a document review. In this case, it was a 8 or 9 page property management agreement, so it wasn't really that big a deal, so forth and so on. So you review the contract. You also agree to reduce your hourly rate, whatever your hourly rate is, or agree to a $125 per hour minimum. And so that's what I agreed to, the $125 hour minimum. So in other words, you get the lead, you talk to somebody, you're reviewing their property management contract, and they say, well, I want to negotiate this contract. I want to put a couple special clauses in there. And you say, well, that's fine, we can negotiate that, but you'll need to retain my firm to assist you, so forth and so on. And then you enter into a retainer agreement agreeing to the reduced rate with your client. So it can be a way to generate some business, as you can see in a case like this. A property management client is a good one. That's the kinds of clients that our firm's looking for, business and investors and those kinds of things. So it can be helpful. It's a lead that comes through the internet. Now, as far as I understand, RocketLawyer is backed by Google, so you are getting involved with a company that's got some. There was a potential client out there. You get involved with a company that I think has some good backing, so it's not a bad company to put your time into. In other words. But you also agree in their document libraries, you agree to review one of their contracts. I think it's once per month. You will go in and review and maybe add your suggestions as a lawyer, almost like open source, if that makes sense. Open source law, you know how it is with software. Everybody builds on the code. It's sort of the same concept here. And then 10% on reduction on any of your existing flat rate fees. So there are some obligations, some things that are expected of you. I've got a bunch of leads so far, and like I said, and sort of the jury's still out for me. I've answered some questions, given some general information. You try to see if there's a need for retaining your services, but bear in mind, they're paying a monthly fee as members. They're paying a monthly fee into RocketLawyer, so it's not as if they're totally willing to pay the monthly fee and an attorney fee. The reality that I see anyway, this is my personal opinion, is you might get a case out of it, and you might just end up answering email leads, like you do on Avo or Law Guru, some of these other sites, and that's really the end of it. So jury's still out for me. I'm still sort of testing the waters and seeing if a potential client comes out of this or not. Downsides, again, I think the downsides are ethics, getting questions that are not in your comfort zone. Of course, the ethical rules are you need to either get the requisite knowledge or associate with someone with the requisite knowledge if you're not aware. And so that could be a little tricky, especially when you're indemnifying RocketLawyer for everything and you're not making money on it and you're helping to build essentially their brand. Not so much your brand, because remember, you're calling these people and they're knowing that you're calling from RocketLawyer. So in a sense, you're helping them build their brand, but you're assuming the risk of the liability. So be aware of that. That's to me one of the downsides that I see of this. And the same thing with free document reviews. Sometimes you can't learn a client's entire story in a half hour. Sometimes, as you know, as attorneys, there's a lot of background facts and information that you want to get before you're rendering legal advice. So you have to be careful in that area to not overstep your boundaries. But in general, I find it to be an interesting so far, and I'll keep you posted on where it goes from here. But that is Attorney Steve's general review of RocketLawyer for new lawyers. Hope this helps.